Introduction. An overcrowded, dimly lit cafe in Chelsea, at a rickety table covered with a blue checked cloth, sits a heavily bearded, swarthy man dressed in a virulent green polo sweater and a thick red cloak. He is lolling idly in his chair, listening absent-mindedly to a Russian-looking girl with flat jet hair who is wearing long green earrings. In a deep bass voice, she is explaining just why a fashionable sculptor will never be really great. Too many inhibitions, my dear fellow. Quite impossible, really. It is 2 a.m, and they are sipping coffee as black as it can be, bought in what they call this benighted country. He, of course, is a well-known painter. She, a model, or something on the stage. This picture, or one very similar, is conjured up in many people's minds at the sound of the word art, and it is undoubtedly responsible for much of the prejudice against that subject, even while it endows it with a degree of false but exciting romance. It is, however, by no means a true picture. When the actors in the scene described were playing their characteristic parts, the real artists with whose work this book is concerned were almost certainly in bed and asleep after a hard day's labour. A crystal-clear brain and a rock-steady hand are essential for most kinds of art, and neither of them is acquired on a diet of black coffee, alcohol, and nicotine. In whatever form art may express itself, as painting, drawing, music, singing, or acting, it is subject to certain definable principles, and, in addition, it requires in the artist mastery of a technique. The first article in this book, The Glory and Good of Art, attempts to set out in simple, clear language those underlying principles of all art which form the difficult but enthralling subject known as aesthetics. It also enters briefly into some of the classical controversies on the subject and touches on the problems set for us by the moderns of our own time. The Glory and Good of Art by Paul Chadbourne, B.A., B. Little, Oxon. The amateur with his paintbox in the park, Michelangelo cramped on the scaffolding under the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, the boy whittling a figure from a tree branch, Donatello shaping Madonnas out of stone, Chrysler with his Stradivarius, and the shepherd with his pipe. What are they trying to do? Artists are notoriously touchy people. As a rule, it is not wise to ask them what they are trying to do. Explanations are best left to the critics, and the explanations in the end always amount to this. Artists are out to capture, to create, or to interpret beauty, and to communicate it. In the past, the inquirer might have remained content with this explanation. Today, perhaps, he looks about him puzzled. The modern critics themselves are sometimes puzzled. Can beauty survive in a democratic world? They cry. This question strikes at the very root of the matter, raising the problem of the nature of art and its relation to life. So we shall begin by examining it. What exactly do the critics mean when they ask, can beauty survive in a democratic world? By a democratic world they mean, quite apart from the political upheavals in various countries since the World War, a condition of affairs which shows an increasing tendency to alter the physical appearance of the entire globe. They mean the startling transformation of town and countryside which goes on apace and which is due to the invasion on all sides into every sphere of life, into every home and hamlet and colonial outpost, of science and its inseparable attendant, the machine. They mean pylons, railways, factory chimneys sprouting from the fields, petrol tanks, garish cafes, roadhouses. They mean beauty spots, littered with refuse, loud with gramophones and radio, cocktail parties on the pyramids, and monsters in Loch Ness. This is what the people who express their anxiety about the survival of beauty mean by a democratic world. And what do they mean by beauty? That is a question they would find more difficult to answer. Let us say, at a rough guess, they mean that something, we can define it no more exactly than that which resides in nature and human life as a kind of intermittent tracery behind the surface of things, which we see dimly, which the artist sees more clearly. Something the artist recreates for us which gives us pleasure, and which, recognizing, we call beauty. Beauty captured and held by art. Art, to be distinguished from craftsmanship, which is the making of an object perfectly adapted to practical uses, as, for instance, a chair. Art captures beauty. It brings out, stamped with the artist's individuality, that underlying harmony and form we all perceive in nature, dimly or clearly, as we are sensitive to such things. It is all one whether the work of art finds immediate response in our experience, or whether the artist's representation of the underlying harmony is strange to us at first, as was Epstein's figure of Rima, for example. It is art nevertheless, if sooner or later its significance appears and enriches our perception of nature, our experience of life. The art Jeremiahs, then, have a case against a democratic world. They prophesy the death of beauty, because the forms we have become accustomed to perceive in nature are speedily becoming extinct. And not only that, beautiful old buildings are rapidly being demolished to make way for new buildings, which, if they be beautiful, and this we shall discuss later, are certainly not so in the way, let us say, that a Gothic church is beautiful. The answer to the question whether beauty can survive in a democratic world can only be given when we have examined what art is, the nature of the impulse which goes to create it, and the connection of art with life.